The millionaire left the millionaire dinner, certain of victory. Across the street, he saw his ex-wife begging for leftovers. Beside her, 3 triplets with her face were crying with hunger. That night, the richest man in the country lost his footing. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you are watching us. We will continue. Camera flashes illuminated Miguel Enrique Volker's face as he walked down the red carpet at the capital's cultural center. His tailored Italian suit and the platinum watch on his wrist reflected the spotlight, creating an almost mystical aura around him. At 38, he was the living portrait of business success. The press buzz grew louder as he approached the main entrance. Reporters jostled, microphones thrust toward him like spears aimed at a modern-day gladiator. Miguel wore the practiced smile he had perfected over the past 5 years since his tech startup, TechVision, had grown into one of the largest companies in its sector in Latin America. Mr. Volker, how does it feel to be honored at the most important charity event of the year? A young reporter managed to break through the security guards. It's an incomparable honor, he replied automatically, without having to think. The words flowed like water, rehearsed 1,000 times in front of the mirror. But the real recognition must go to all the TechVision employees who made this possible. Inside the auditorium, the lights were softer, but the atmosphere was no less intense. Executives, celebrities, and public figures occupied the front rows. Miguel greeted everyone with the same studied cordiality, handing out smiles and handshakes, like business cards. His personal assistant, Ricardo, discreetly whispered the names of important people in his ear, ensuring that no social faux pas would tarnish his immaculate image. In the front row, his seat was marked with a gold plaque. He sat down, adjusting his silk tie out of habit. The stage in front of him was grand, with a giant screen displaying the event's logo. Social Transformation Award 2025, recognizing those who make a difference. The Master of Ceremonies began his presentation, his voice reverberating throughout the auditorium. Miguel discreetly checked his cell phone. 3 important emails from the Asian headquarters, 2 messages from the board of directors, a stock market report. His life was measured in numbers, deadlines, and goals. Our first honoree of the night. The host's voice sounded distant as Miguel quickly responded to an urgent email. Revolutionized the local technology market. A gentle elbow nudged him. Ricardo indicated that it was time for his presentation. Miguel put away his cell phone and assumed his award-winning CEO posture. The screen behind him began to display images of his professional career, the garage where it all began, his first achievements, the increasingly larger offices, the glowing headlines. As he walked on stage to applause, something strange happened. A nagging feeling, as if something important was missing. The emptiness that he used to ignore between one meeting and another, between one flight and another, between one success and another, seemed more present than ever. Miguel Enrique Volker, the presenter announced enthusiastically, a man who transformed not only the market, but the lives of thousands of people through technological innovation. More applause, more flashes. Miguel adjusted the microphone and began his memorized speech. The words came out perfectly modulated, like the notes of a rehearsed symphony. He spoke about innovation, perseverance, and digital transformation. The audience reacted at the right moments, laughing at the planned jokes, applauding during the strategic pauses. But something was different that night. Maybe it was the weight of the award in his hands, or the artificial glow of the lights, or the echo of his own voice in the auditorium. For the first time in a long time, Miguel allowed himself to question whether all this success was really worth it. The speech ended, and more applause echoed. He returned to his seat, receiving greetings and pats on the back. Ricardo was already organizing his schedule for the next day, a meeting at 7 a.m., a video conference with investors at 9 a.m., and lunch with potential partners at noon. Now, the host's voice cut through her thoughts. It is with great honor that we announce our next honoree, a woman who has dedicated her life to transforming the reality of single mothers in vulnerable situations. Miguel picked up his cell phone again, distracted. More emails, more appointments, more numbers. The presenter's voice continued in the background, but he wasn't paying attention. Not until he heard a name that made his heart stop for a moment. Helena Martins Della. The name crossed the auditorium like a precise arrow, hitting Miguel squarely. The cell phone almost slipped from his trembling hands. 5 years, 5 long years since he had last heard that name spoken aloud. The main screen in the auditorium lit up again, and there she was, Helena. Her brown hair now had a few silvery strands at the temples, but her smile remained the same, the one that had won him over so long ago. In the projected photos, she appeared among women and children, in a social project that seemed to be very successful. Through the Warrior Mothers Project, Helena transformed the lives of hundreds of women, the presenter continued, his voice now sounding distant to Miguel's ears, offering not only material support, but mainly professional training and emotional support. Miguel could barely breathe. The images kept flashing. Helena giving lectures, Helena receiving awards, Helena hugging 3 boys who smiled for the camera. His heart skipped a beat. The boys. Something about them, something too familiar. Ricardo, he whispered to his assistant, Who are those boys in the photo? Her children, sir, Ricardo replied, quickly consulting his tablet. Triplets. They are well known in the project. They actively participate in activities with other children. Triplets. Miguel felt the world spin, his mind raced, making frantic calculations. 5 years since they broke up. The boys looked about that age, their features so similar to... No, it couldn't be. Helena took the stage to warm applause. Her navy blue dress, simple but elegant, contrasted with the excessive shine of the other guests. She had always preferred discretion to ostentation. Her voice, when she began to speak, still carried that serene strength that Miguel knew so well. This award is not mine, she began. It belongs to every mother who, even alone, found the strength to start over. To every child who, even without having everything, never lost hope. Miguel watched every gesture, every expression. How could she be there, so close, after so long? The last words they exchanged still echoed in his memory. Unanswered messages, blocked calls, an abrupt breakup buried under millions in contracts and acquisitions. The boys appeared on the screen again, this time in a video. They were doing a project activity, helping other children with their schoolwork. The oldest was explaining something seriously. The middle one was drawing with concentration, and the youngest was laughing spontaneously. Miguel felt something break inside him. The boy's eyes. Were his eyes? Impossible, he muttered to himself, his forehead covered in cold sweat. Helena continued her speech, talking about overcoming and perseverance. At a certain point, their eyes met. For a very brief moment, Miguel saw something pass through her eyes. Recognition, perhaps pain, definitely strength. She did not look away. It was he who did. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Miguel barely registered the other honorees, the speeches, the applause. His mind was stuck in an endless loop of unanswered questions. Why didn't she ever tell him? Why didn't he ever know? How could he have been so blind? When the lights came on to signal the end of the event, Miguel found himself frozen in his chair. People were starting to get up, exchange cards and network. Ricardo was already organizing his exit through the back, avoiding the press. But for the first time in years, Miguel didn't want to run away. Ricardo, his voice was hoarse. Cancel. My appointment's for tomorrow. Sir? But the meeting with the Chinese... Cancel everything, he repeated firmly. His eyes were fixed on Helena, who was talking to some people near the stage. There's something I need to take care of. The 3 boys approached her, hugging her proudly. Miguel felt his heart sink. It was her eyes, her smile, even some of her gestures reflected there, multiplied by 3. How had he not noticed before? How had he allowed 5 years to pass? Without knowing. He stood up, straightened his suit out of habit, and took a step toward them. He didn't know what to say, how to act, what to expect. For the first time in his life as a successful executive, Miguel Henrique Volker was completely without a script. The cocktail party after the award ceremony turned the lobby of the cultural sent her into a maze of conversations and furtive glances. Miguel walked through the crowd with hesitant steps, something unusual for someone used to dominating any environment. His eyes never left Helena and the boys, who were surrounded by admirers of the project. Ricardo, his faithful assistant, tried to accompany him with a worried expression. "Sir, perhaps it would be better if we waited for a more opportune moment. Tomorrow we can arrange a more private meeting." "No," Miguel snapped, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. "I've waited too long." One of the boys, the youngest of the triplets, was the first to notice him. His eyes, identical to Miguel's, widened with curiosity. He nudged his middle brother, who in turn caught the attention of the oldest. The three of them were now watching him, whispering to each other with the unique intimacy of brothers. "It's him," Miguel heard one of them whisper. "The man from the television." Helena noticed her son's agitation and followed their gazes. Her friendly smile froze for a moment when her eyes met Miguel's. With a calm that only years could provide, she apologized to the people around her and approached the boys like a lioness protecting her cubs. "Miguel," she said, her voice controlled but firm, "congratulations on the honor." "Helena, all." The words she had mentally rehearsed in the last few minutes evaporated. They are my children," she added, emphasizing the possessive pronoun. "Peter, Luke, and Matthew." The boys, all with Miguel's green eyes and dark hair, watched, him with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Pedro, the oldest, stood protectively next to his mother. Lucas, the middle one, held a sketchbook against his chest like a shield. Mateus, the youngest, smiled shyly, rocking on his heels. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" The question escaped Miguel's lips before he could stop it. Helena's face hardened. "Tell me? You blocked all my contacts, Miguel. You changed your number, your address. Your secretaries had express orders not to pass on my calls. I tried. For weeks, months." The truth hit Miguel like a punch to the gut. He remembered the orders he had given his team back then, determined to bury that relationship under piles of work and professional success. "I didn't know if I had known." "If you had known what?" Helena interrupted, keeping her voice low but thick with emotion. "Would you have acted differently? Would you have chosen family over empire?" Pedro stepped forward, his green eyes sparkling with a maturity beyond his years. "Mom, who is he?" Helena hesitated, years of protection and care weighing on her shoulders. He was a friend of Mom's a long time ago." "Don't lie to them," Miguel surprised everyone, including himself. "They deserve the truth." His voice trailed off. How could he sum up in words the weight of that revelation? "You're the magazine man," Lucas, the quiet one, spoke up for the first time. "The one who built the computers we use at school." Matthew, unable to contain his natural curiosity, took a step toward Miguel. "Is it true that you started your company in a garage?" The moment was interrupted by Ricardo, who approached discreetly. "Mr. Volker, the press is approaching." Helena immediately tensed. "I don't want my children exposed," she declared, beginning to gather them together. "Not now, not like this." "Wait," Miguel asked, almost pleading. Can we meet somewhere else, have a proper chat?" Helena studied his face for long seconds, searching for something that even she herself could not define. Finally, she nodded slightly. "Tomorrow, at the cafe and the bookstore in the mall. At 10 o'clock. No press, no assistants, no all that." She gestured vaguely to the luxurious surroundings. "Fanfare." Miguel quickly agreed, feeling his heart race at the possibility of answers, of redemption, of connection with those three boys who bore his features. "Come on, boys," Helena called softly. Pedro gave Miguel one last suspicious look before following his mother. Lucas put his sketchbook in his backpack without rushing. Mateus nodded discreetly, a small smile playing on his lips. Miguel watched them leave, feeling simultaneously lighter and heavier than ever. 5 years of absence weighed on his shoulders like lead. Ricardo remained by his side, lost between professional concern and personal compassion. "Cancel all appointments for tomorrow," Miguel repeated, his voice low but resolute. "And Ricardo, Find all the messages, emails, any record of Helena trying to contact him from 5 years ago. I want to know exactly what happened." As he left the event through the back door, Miguel knew his life had just changed irrevocably. The empire he had built, the achievements he had accumulated, all seemed suddenly empty in the face of that night's revelation. 3 pairs of green eyes, identical to his own, had awakened something that years of professional success had failed to fill. It was a long night in the penthouse apartment overlooking Park Central. Miguel spent hours rummaging through old boxes in the closet, searching for any trace of the past he had tried so hard to bury. Among old contracts and newspaper clippings from the early days of TechVision, he found a yellowed folder with a hospital logo. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. It was a hospital bill in Helena's name dated 5 years ago. The date coincided with the period when they had lost contact. Attached to the document was a handwritten note in her handwriting. "We need to talk. It's important. Please call me." The note had been kept along with other documents by his former secretary, following his express orders not to be disturbed with personal matters during the crucial phase of the company's expansion. Miguel sat on the floor of the closet, feeling the weight of his choices as never before. Next morning, he arrived at the bookstore half an hour earlier than expected. He chose a discreet table on the mezzanine, away from the windows and prying eyes. He ordered a coffee that went cold, untouched, as the minutes dragged by. At 10 o'clock, sharp Helena arrived with the boys. She was always punctual, Miguel remembered. The boys seemed more relaxed today, dressed casually for a Saturday morning. Pedro still maintained his protective posture, but his eyes revealed curiosity. Lucas carried his inseparable sketchbook, and Mateus practically skipped, barely containing his energy. "Good morning," Helena greeted, helping the boys settle in. "I hope you don't mind, but I promised they could have hot chocolate." Miguel immediately signaled to the waiter. Sure. What else would you like? There are cakes, cookies." "That's not why we're here," Pedro interrupted, surprising the adults. "We want to know the truth." Helena took a deep breath, exchanging a meaningful look with Miguel. "Yes, you deserve to know. Miguel, he's your father." The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the distant noise of the bookstore. Lucas stopped drawing, his pencil suspended in mid-air. Matthew widened his eyes, looking from Miguel to Helena repeatedly. Pedro remained motionless, processing the information. "Why have you never visited us?" The question came from Lucas, his voice soft but direct. Miguel felt his heart clench. I didn't know about you guys. When your mother and I split up, I was so focused on work that—" He trailed off, realizing how hollow his apology sounded. "Mom always worked hard too," Pedro observed, "but she never abandoned us." "Pedro," Helena warned softly, "it's more complicated than that." "No, he's right," Miguel interjected. "I made bad choices. I prioritized things that seemed important at the time, but now—" He looked at the 3 young faces before him, each reflecting different aspects of himself. "Now I see how much I missed out on." Matthew, who had been unusually quiet, leaned forward. "Are you going to disappear again?" The question, so direct and innocent, struck Miguel like a bolt of lightning. "No," he answered with a firmness that surprised even himself. "If you give me a chance, I want to be part of your lives, in whatever way you allow, in your own time." Helena. Watch the interaction with a mixture of protection and caution. "Miguel, don't make promises you can't keep. They've been through a lot. This is not an empty promise." He pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to Helena. "These are records of all your attempts to contact me from the past 5 years. My team found everything. The blocked calls, the filtered emails, even that note in the hospital." His voice trailed off. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to build a different future." Helena opened the envelope with slightly trembling hands, recognizing her own handwriting on some of the documents. The boys approached, curious. "Do you draw too?" Lucas asked suddenly, noticing an old sketch among the papers. Miguel smiled, the first genuine smile of the morning. I actually started tech vision designing application interfaces. Want to see some of my old drawings? Lucas nodded shyly, pushing his sketchpad toward Miguel. On the pages were surprisingly detailed sketches of computers and tablets, not unlike the ones Miguel used to make early in his career. The meeting at the bookstore lasted all morning. Hot chocolates were replaced by juices, and cakes gave way to sandwiches. Miguel discovered that Pedro was passionate about chess and programming, that Lucas dreamed of being an architect, and that Mateus had a natural talent for making everyone around him smile. I won the school championship last month, Pedro said, trying to keep his tone casual as he talked about his chess victory. Mom said I inherited my strategic thinking from her. Miguel smiled, recognizing in Pedro the same need to appear strong that he himself had in his youth. Your mother has always been brilliant at strategy. Did you know that she was the one who helped me structure Tech Vision's first business plan? Helena, who was helping Matthew clean up some spilled chocolate, looked up in surprise. She didn't expect Miguel to remember those details. It's true, he continued, encouraged by the boy's interest. Your mother spent nights helping me organize spreadsheets and projections, even when everyone said it was crazy to quit a steady job and start from scratch. Lucas, who had been concentrating on his drawing, picked up his pad. He had made an impressive sketch of the group sitting at the table, capturing each person's expressions perfectly. Can I show you more of my drawings? I have a whole notebook of building designs. Of course you can, Miguel replied, feeling a surge of pride at seeing his son's talent. In fact, we're planning a new campus for Tech Vision. Maybe you could give me some ideas? Lucas's eyes lit up at the possibility, but he looked to Helena for approval. She nodded slightly, though Miguel could see the concern in her eyes. I don't want them to be disappointed, she said softly, when the boys were distracted by the waiter bringing more juice. I can't watch them suffer, Miguel. I understand, he replied with equal seriousness. But I need you to understand too, I'm not the man I was 5 years ago. Finding out I have 3 children, that's changed everything. Matthew, who had been unusually quiet, approached Miguel. Are you going to come to our birthday next month? We're going to have a small party at Mom's project. The other kids always ask about our dad. The innocent request made Miguel's heart clench. Helena quickly intervened. Mateus, we can't demand. I will, Miguel interrupted firmly. If you'll allow it, Helena, I would very much like to be present. A moment of silence followed, broken only by the distant sounds of the bookstore. Helena studied her ex-husband's face, searching for signs of the old Miguel, the one who put the company above all else. Instead, she found something different in his eyes, a vulnerability she'd never seen before. Okay, she finally agreed. But let's set a few rules first. No expensive or extravagant gifts, they don't need them. Miguel nodded, even though part of him wanted to make up for 5 years of absence with all the gifts in the world. Second, Helena continued, any commitment you make to them is sacred. If you say you'll show up, you have to show up. It doesn't matter what meeting or business is going on. I see, Miguel replied, already taking out his cell phone. Ricardo, cancel all my meetings on the 15th of next month. It's my children's birthdays. The word children came naturally from his mouth, making the boys smile discreetly. Pedro, even while maintaining his protective posture, relaxed a little. In his chair. Third, Helena lowered her voice, don't use these for advertising or marketing. They are not accessories to enhance your public image. I would never do that, Miguel replied vehemently. Actually, he hesitated, then continued. I'm thinking about stepping back from the CEO role for a while. Maybe it's time to prioritize other things. Helena stared at him, surprised by the statement. The Miguel she had known would never consider walking away from power, from control. Can we go to your office and meet the robots? Matthew asked suddenly, breaking the tense moment. Lucas wants to draw them, and Pedro said he can program one if you let him. Miguel laughed, feeling a joy that no business success had ever given him. How about we start with a visit next week? I can show you where it all began, that garage that became our first headquarters. Wow? Pedro asked perceptively. Yes, ours, Helena confirmed, surprising everyone. That garage, that's where it all started. including you three, even if we didn't know it at the time. The following week, Miguel parked his car in front of a modest building. The location was a stark contrast to TechVision's mirrored headquarters, in the downtown business district, but it held a much more significant history. Helena arrived promptly with the boys, who could barely contain their excitement. "Is this it?" Pedro asked, looking at the plain facade. "It doesn't look like a place where technology is created." "The best things often start in the most unlikely places," Helena replied, a slight smile on her lips as memories flooded her mind. Miguel unlocked the gate, revealing a garage that had been preserved almost intact. An old work table still occupied one corner, covered in tools and bits of electronic equipment. On the walls, faded post-its held ideas and dreams from the past. Lucas immediately opened his sketchbook, capturing the details of the environment. Matthew ran from one side to the other, fascinated by each object. Peter, in turn, carefully examined a whiteboard that still bore traces of ancient codes. "This is where your mother convinced me not to give up," Miguel said, touching a yellowed post-it note. "We had lost a major investor, and I was about to throw it all away and go back to my old job." Helena approached the whiteboard, recognizing her own handwriting mixed with Miguel's. "You had the ideas. I just helped organize them." "It was more than that," Miguel insisted, turning to the boys. "Your mother had an incredible ability to see the potential in things, even when they seemed impossible. She was the one who suggested turning our first app into an educational platform." "Like the project Mom is running now?" Lucas asked, looking up from his drawing. "Exactly," Helena confirmed. "Some ideas never really leave us." Miguel walked over to an old bookshelf and pulled out a dusty box. Inside were old photos of him and Helena when they were younger, working side by side in that same garage. In one of them, Helena was asleep on a pile of documents, a half-empty cup of coffee beside her. "You guys look happy," Matthew observed, looking at the photos over Miguel's shoulder. "We were," Helena replied softly. "Sometimes happiness gets lost in the way of other goals." Pedro, who had been inspecting an old computer, turned to his parents. "Why did you break up?" The silence that followed was heavy with regrets and unspoken words. Miguel sat down in the old office chair, which creaked under his weight. "I lost my way," he finally admitted. "I mistook success for happiness. When the company started to grow, I convinced myself that I had to sacrifice everything for growth. Meetings, travel, endless commitments. Little by little, I drifted away from what really mattered." Helena leaned against her desk, her fingers absently tracing old coffee marks. "And I was so focused on not being an obstacle to your dreams that it took me a while to realize we had stopped dreaming together." Lucas had stopped drawing, absorbing every word. Matthew approached Helena, hugging her around the waist. Pedro remained between his parents, his young face marked by an understanding beyond his years. "But now it's different," Miguel continued, his gaze meeting Helena's. "When you lose something truly important, you learn. You learn the hard way, but you learn." "What did you learn?" Pedro asked, his voice carrying a mixture of challenge and hope. Miguel stood up, walking over to the wall where one particular post-it note caught his attention. On it, in Helena's handwriting, was written, "True success is not measured in numbers, but in smiles." The news spread like wildfire through the halls of TechVision. The powerful CEO was gradually stepping away from the day-to-day operations of the company. Rumors grew with each cancelled meeting, each rescheduled appointment. On the 12th floor of the corporate building, the boardroom was abuzz with speculation. "This is unacceptable," thundered Carlos Muller, the company's main shareholder, banging his fist on the glass table. "Miguel is throwing away years of work because of a family drama?" Ricardo, who was attending the meeting as Miguel's representative, maintained his professional demeanor. "Mr. Volker is simply restructuring his priorities. The company remains solid and..." "Priorities?" Sofia Torres, the chief financial officer, interrupted. "Since when are 3 children who appeared out of nowhere a priority over a company valued at billions?" Across town, oblivious to the storm brewing at the company, Miguel was attending his first parent-teacher meeting at the boys' school. Sitting next to Helena in a classroom decorated with children's artwork, he listened intently as the teacher discussed the triplets' development. Pedro has an exceptional talent for mathematics and computing, the teacher explained. Lucas excels in art and design, while Matthew has remarkable emotional intelligence for his age. Helena discreetly observed Miguel's reactions to each comment. He took notes on his tablet, asked pertinent questions, and showed a genuine interest that surprised her. There's an advanced development program that would be perfect for Pedro, the teacher continued, and Lucas could really benefit from extra art lessons. How much does it cost? Miguel asked automatically, already reaching for his cell phone. Helena cleared her throat softly, giving him a meaningful look. He paused, remembering their agreement, not to try to make up for his absence with money. Sorry, he corrected himself. What kind of time commitment would that require? I want to be involved in the process. The teacher smiled, approving the change in approach. But before she could respond, Miguel's cell phone began to vibrate insistently. On the screen, several urgent messages from Ricardo flashed. The council is in an uproar, one of them said. We need you here now. Miguel felt the familiar tightness in his chest, that sensation of being pulled in opposite directions. Helena noticed his tension and, surprisingly, touched his arm lightly. Go, she said softly. I know it's important. He hesitated, looking from the teacher to Helena. No, I promised it would be different this time. The school meeting is priority. Miguel, Helena insisted, you don't have to choose between all or nothing. You can balance things out as long as you keep your promises when it really matters. The teacher, realizing the delicate moment, offered, we can schedule a continuation of the meeting next week. That way you will have time to process today's information and bring up new questions. Miguel nodded, grateful for the understanding. Before leaving, he turned to Helena. The Saboy's birthday next week. Nothing will stop me from being there. I know you don't, she replied, and there was a new confidence in her voice. At Tech Vision, the situation was even more tense than the messages suggested. The board had called an extraordinary meeting, and the main shareholders were demanding explanations about the rumors of his departure. You don't understand, Miguel declared as he entered the boardroom, interrupting a heated discussion. I'm not abandoning the company. I'm realigning priorities. Priorities? Carlos scoffed. You built this from scratch, Miguel. It's your legacy. No, Miguel replied, his voice firm. My legacy is 3 5-year-old boys who barely know me, and an extraordinary woman who raised those children alone while I was too busy counting digits in a bank account. Sofia Torres stood up, adjusting her expensive framed glasses. Miguel, be reasonable. We can hire the best tutors, set up $1 million trust fund for these kids. You don't have to sacrifice everything you've built. Miguel walked to the window, looking out at the city that stretched out below. He remembered Lucas's drawing, Matthew's smile, Pedro's intensity. He thought of Helena's silent strength, the nights she spent alone in the hospital, the struggles she faced without asking for help. You still don't get it, he said finally, turning to face the council. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm finally building something worthwhile. On the eve of the triplets' birthday, the Warrior Mothers project was in full swing. Helena coordinated the party preparations with the same efficiency she applied to her social programs. The children assisted by the project helped to decorate the community hall with balloons and colorful ribbons. Are you sure you don't want something bigger? Miguel asked, taking in the modest space. We could do it in the ballroom. Miguel. Helena interrupted him with a patient smile. What did we agree on about extravagances? He sighed, surrendering. The last few days had been an exercise in restraint. His instinct was to make up for every lost moment with expensive gifts and grand gestures, but Helena was determined to keep the boys' feet firmly on the ground. Lucas approached, showing his newest drawing, a portrait of the family together, including Miguel. It's for the wall at the party, he explained shyly. Miguel felt a lump in his throat at how naturally his son had included him in the family scene. It's perfect, he managed to say, noting the meticulous details Lucas had captured. Pedro supervised the installation of the educational electronic games that would be used during the party. a concession that Helena allowed after much insistence from the boys. Mateus circulated among the other children, ensuring that everyone felt included in the preparations. "They're amazing," Miguel commented, watching as each of the triplets expressed their unique personality. "How did you do it, Helena? Raising 3 children on your own, keeping this project going?" "One day at a time," she replied, arranging the final details of the decorations. "And a lot of help from this community that you see here. When you allow people to help you, you find that you are never truly alone." One of the mothers assisted by the project approached timidly. "Mrs. Helena, I brought the sweets you asked for." "Wonderful, Maria. You can put it on the kitchen table. And how is the programming course going?" "Very good." The woman's eyes lit up. "I can already make some simple websites. Next week, I'll start my first freelance job." Miguel watched the interaction with growing interest. "Do you offer programming courses here?" "Among others," Helena explained. "The idea is to give these women tools to achieve financial independence. We started with basic computer courses, but we realized there was potential for much more." "You saved my life," Maria added, addressing Helena but glancing sideways at Miguel. "When I first arrived here, I didn't even know how to turn on a computer. Now, I can work from home and take care of my son at the same time." Miguel felt a familiar creative restlessness, the same feeling he had when he was about to develop a new project. "Helena, have you thought about expanding this, creating a distance learning platform specifically for single mothers?" "Yes," she admitted, "but we would need a technology framework that is beyond our current budget." "What if?" Miguel began, but was interrupted by Matthew, who came running. "Dad, come see the cake that Aunt Maria made. It has robots drawn with chocolate." The word father, spoken so naturally, took Miguel by surprise. It was the first time any of the boys had called him that. Helena noticed it too, and her eyes softened as she saw the emotion on her ex-husband's face. "Let's see this cake then," Miguel replied, letting himself be pulled by Mateus's small, eager hand. In the project's kitchen, among homemade sweets and a cake decorated with chocolate robots, Miguel observed the movement of volunteers and those assisted by the project. Women from different backgrounds, united by the determination to build a better future for their children. Not much different, he realized, from what Helena had done for the triplets. Pedro approached with a tablet, proudly showing a small program he had created. "It's an educational game for the younger children in the project," he explained. Lucas made the drawings, and Mateus tested them with the other kids to see if they were fun. Miguel looked at Helena, who was organizing the final details of the party with her usual efficiency. She had created much more than a social project. She had built a community. And her children, far from being harmed by the simplicity, had flourished in an environment of love, creativity, and purpose. The triplets' birthday dawned bright and sunny. The Warrior Mothers Project Hall was already in full swing early, with volunteers helping with the final preparations. Lucas's drawing, lovingly framed, occupied a prominent place on the main wall, depicting the family together. Miguel arrived an hour before the party started, carrying 3 simple packages, as agreed with Helena. Inside each one was something special that he had personally chosen for each child, considering their unique personalities. "You really came," Pedro commented, trying to hide his smile as he helped organize the educational games. "I promised I'd be here, didn't I?" Miguel replied, placing the gifts on the designated table. "And I have other news to share later." Helena watched the interaction discreetly as she coordinated the final preparations. In the last few weeks, she had seen a significant change in Miguel. The ruthless businessman was giving way to a more present, more aware man. The children from the project began to arrive, filling the space with laughter and energy. Mateus, in his natural role as host, welcomed everyone with hugs and smiles. Lucas proudly displayed his drawings displayed on the walls, while Pedro patiently explained how the games he had helped program worked. "Time for presents," announced one of the volunteers, gathering all the children together. Miguel watched nervously as the boys opened their packages. For Pedro, an educational robotics kit that allowed him to create and program simple projects. The boy's eyes lit up when he saw the pieces. "Can we ride together?" he asked, for the first time showing real enthusiasm for his father. "Sure," Miguel replied, his heart racing at the prospect. "I can teach you a few tricks I learned when I first started out in the field." Lucas received a professional drawing set, including materials that Helena would normally consider too expensive, but which Miguel had convinced her were suitable for encouraging her son's talent. "These are the same brands that architects use," Miguel explained softly. "I thought I could help with your building designs." The always quiet Lucas hugged his father spontaneously, surprising everyone. For Mateus, the gift was a tablet, specially configured with educational games and apps that stimulated emotional intelligence and communication skills, his greatest strengths. "There's an app here that will help you create stories," Miguel showed. "You can use it to record all the amazing stories that happen in the project." But the most significant moment of the party was yet to come. Miguel asked for everyone's attention, including the mothers and children of the project. "In the last few days, I've learned a lot about what really matters," he began, his voice carrying genuine emotion. "Thanks to Helena and the May Guerreras project, I understood that success is not measured only in numbers." Helena watched closely, trying to anticipate what would come next. "That's why I'd like to announce that TechVision is officially partnering with the project. We're going to create a distance learning platform specifically for single mothers, with courses on technology, entrepreneurship, and personal development." A murmur of excitement ran through the room. Helena put her hands to her mouth in surprise. "But that's not all," Miguel continued, looking directly at his children. "I've also decided to step down as CEO of TechVision to focus on this new project. I'll continue on the board, but my priority now will be to develop initiatives that really make a difference in people's lives." Pedro, Lucas, and Mateus looked at each other, processing the information. Helena took a step forward, visibly moved. "Miguel, you don't need to." "I do," he interrupted gently. "I'm not doing this just for the boys or for you. I'm doing it because for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm on the right path." Maria, the mother who had brought the sweets the day before, stood up shyly. "Does this mean more mothers like me will get the chance to learn programming?" "Exactly," Miguel smiled. "And even better, we want the project participants themselves to help develop the platform. After all, who better to understand the needs of other single mothers?" The party turned into an even bigger celebration. It wasn't just the triplets' birthday they were celebrating, but the beginning of a new phase for everyone involved. The week after the anniversary, TechVision's old garage was given a new purpose. Miguel had decided to transform it into the development center for the new educational platform, while maintaining the simplicity of the place that had witnessed the beginning of it all. "It's strange to be back here," Helena said, noting the subtle changes in the space. Collaborative work tables had replaced the old countertops, and a new whiteboard shared space with the old one, preserved as a memory. The triplets loved the idea of spending their afternoons there after school. Pedro had already claimed a corner to set up his robotics kit, while Lucas had turned an entire wall into his project board. Mateus circulated among the project mothers who came to the first planning meetings, collecting stories for his new app. "Remember when you used to sleep at that same table?" Miguel asked, pointing to where Helena used to work in the early hours of the morning at TechVision. "How could I forget? It was one of those nights that—" She trailed off, blushing slightly. "That the boys were conceived?" he added softly. "I'd already thought of that. The beginning of everything, literally." Maria and other mothers from the project arrived for another planning session. They were helping to develop the platform's interface, ensuring that it would be accessible and practical for other women in similar situations. "Donna Helena," Maria called, "I brought that problem that Pedro helped me solve in the code. The boy is a genius just like his father." Pedro, who pretended not to be paying attention, couldn't hide his smile of pride. Miguel noticed and approached his son. "Do you want to explain to us how you solved the problem?" The boy didn't need much encouragement. Soon he was in front of the board, fluently explaining a programming concept he had taught himself. Lucas, inspired by his brother's presentation, began sketching out how the interface could be made more user-friendly. "Look," Matthew commented, recording everything on his tablet. "Now we have real family meetings." The innocent remark struck both Helena and Miguel in different ways. She thought about how many work meetings had replaced family time in the past. He reflected on how much time he had wasted chasing the wrong kind of success. "You know what?" Miguel said, addressing everyone in the garage. "I think we need to make this official. How about every Wednesday we turn our development meeting into a family gathering? We can work on the project, but we can also have dinner together. Talk. Make pancakes," Matthew suggested hopefully. "Make pancakes," Miguel agreed, laughing. Helena watched the scene with mixed emotions. The man in front of her was so different from the obsessed executive she had known. He still had the same determination, the same sparkle in his eyes when he talked about projects, but now there was something more, a humanity that had been lost along the way. "We need a name for the project," Lucas said, looking up from his drawings. "Something that represents transformation." "How about Restart?" suggested Maria. "That's what Donna Helena's project gave me, and it's what we want to offer to other mothers." "Digital Restart," Pedro added, typing quickly on his computer. "I even know how to make the logo!" Miguel and Helena looked at each other, recognizing in Maria's simple words the perfect summary of their own journey. A new beginning that did not erase the past, but built upon it something new and meaningful. "I think we found our name," Miguel smiled. "And you know what? I think we found a lot more than that." The old garage, a silent witness to so many moments, seemed to vibrate with renewed energy. It was no longer just the birthplace of a technology company, but the nucleus of a much deeper and more significant transformation. The digital restart was growing rapidly, attracting attention from the media and potential partners. One particularly busy morning while Helena was organizing yet another programming class for single mothers, an unexpected visitor changed the course of events. Miguel, Ricardo, who had continued to be his assistant even after the changes, hurried into the renovated garage. "Your mother is here." Silence filled the room. Helena, who was helping Lucas with a new design project, looked up in surprise. The last time she had seen Beatrice Volker was at the wedding, more than 6 years ago. "Where is she?" Miguel asked. Tensely, at the reception, she saw the article about the project in the newspaper. Before they could decide how to proceed, Beatrice was already entering the room, elegant as always in her impeccably tailored ensemble. Her eyes, as green as her son's, scanned the room until they settled on the triplets. "So it's true," she murmured, her voice breaking. "I have grandchildren." Pedro instinctively positioned himself in front of his brothers, a protective gesture that did not go unnoticed by anyone. Helena approached the boys, but it was Mateus who broke the ice. "Are you our grandmother?" he asked, his natural curiosity overcoming any fear. Beatrice nodded, unable to look away from the 3 faces that reminded her so much of her son at the same age. "Yes, I am. And I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner." "Why wasn't I?" Lucas questioned. Quietly, his sketchpad clutched to his chest. The question hung in the air, laden with untold stories and old hurts. Miguel took a step forward, ready to interfere, but Helena stopped him with a gentle gesture. "Maybe," she suggested, "this is a conversation we all need to have." Maria and the other mothers in the project, realizing the delicate moment, discreetly withdrew to the improvised classroom in the back. Miguel led everyone to the common area they had created in a corner of the garage. "I came as soon as I saw the report," Beatrice began, sitting straight-backed in one of the simple chairs. "I couldn't believe it. 3 grandchildren, all this time." "It wasn't just you who didn't know," Miguel interjected, his voice controlled. "I also found out recently." "But why?" Beatrice turned to Helena. "Why didn't you look for your family?" Helena took a deep breath, years of strength and dignity evident in her posture. "I tried many times, but I learned early on that some doors, when they close, we need to respect. How I respected you when you said I had thrown my life away by marrying a dreamer with no future," Miguel added, quoting old words that still hurt. Beatrice lowered her eyes, her mask of elegance giving way to visible regret. "I was wrong, with both of you. I was so worried about status, about appearances. Like Dad, Miguel added, who never approved anything that didn't generate immediate profit. Pedro, who had been listening attentively, frowned. What did your company's board want you to do with us? Use us for marketing. The insight of the comment surprised everyone. Beatriz looked at her grandson with a mixture of pride and regret. Exactly, she admitted. Your grandfather and I, we raised Miguel to be the perfect successor. Efficient, focused, relentless in business. And when he chose to start from scratch with Helena in a garage, the best garage in the world, Matthew interrupted, making everyone smile involuntarily. Yes, the best garage in the world, Beatriz agreed, her eyes welling up. But at the time, I could only see what I thought I was losing, not what we could gain. Lucas silently began to draw. His quick strokes captured the scene. The family gathered together, the complex expressions, the moment of truth unfolding. Do you know why I came back? Beatrice continued, taking a folded newspaper out of her bag. It wasn't just for the story about my grandchildren. It was for this. She opened the newspaper to a specific page. It was an interview with Miguel about his decision to leave the presidency of TechVision to dedicate himself to the social project. I have learned from my children that legacy is not measured in numbers but in smiles, she read, her voice shaking slightly. When I read that, I realized you had become a better man than the one we tried to create. The encounter with Beatrice triggered a series of subtle but significant changes in the family dynamics. In the following weeks, the old garage witnessed the construction of new bridges between generations. Grandma, look what I programmed, Pedro called, proud to show off his newest project on the robotics kit. Beatrice, who had previously only been interested in financial results, now sat patiently to understand every technical detail that her grandson explained. Lucas had decided to make a family photo album, combining old photographs that Beatrice had brought with his own drawings of the present. On one particularly touching page, he had drawn a young Miguel and Helena working in the garage, next to a current photo of the same place. It's amazing how you capture people's essence, Helena commented, looking at the delicate lines her son had made. Are you sure you want to be an architect? You could be an incredible artist. I can be both, Lucas replied with surprising wisdom, like you and your father, who are both businessmen and also help people. Mateus, in turn, had become the family's official chronicler, recording on his tablet all the stories that Beatrice told about the past. Grandma, tell me again how Dad almost set fire to the school chemistry lab. Family Wednesdays now included Beatrice, who always arrived with old stories and a genuine desire to reconnect. One night, while everyone was making pancakes together in the small garage kitchen, she pulled Helena aside. I'm sorry, she said simply, for not being the mother-in-law you deserved, for not being there when the boys were born. Helena smiled softly, watching Miguel try and fail to flip a pancake in the air, much to the delight of the triplets. The important thing is to be here now. The digital restart was also flourishing. Maria, who had started as a student, was now leading her own development team. Other mothers in the project were discovering talents they never imagined they had, transforming their stories of overcoming challenges into inspiration for new mothers. You know what impresses me the most, Miguel said to Helena as they watched a class in progress. How everything connects. The project we started here in this garage, the boys, the mothers we're helping. It's like every piece has its exact place in the puzzle. Sometimes we need to get lost to find the right path, Helena replied, remembering the difficult days after the separation. But I think deep down we always knew where we wanted to go. Pedro, who was nearby helping one of the mothers with a coding problem, looked up. What do you mean? Your father and I, Helena explained, started TechVision with a dream of using technology to help people. Along the way, we lost sight of that original goal. But now with Recomeso Digital, it's like we're back where we started, only wiser. And with 3 bonus junior programmers, Matthew added, making everyone laugh. Lucas, who was finishing another drawing for his family album, showed his latest work, the garage seen from the outside, with light coming through the windows and silhouettes of people working together inside. In the sky he had drawn, stars formed a pattern that resembled an electronic circuit. "That's how I see our family now," he explained shyly. "All connected, like one big system working together." Beatrice, who was watching the scene while organizing another group of mothers for the basic computer course, felt her eyes well up. "You know, Miguel," she said softly to her son, "your father would be proud, not of the empire you built, but of the man you have become." The success of Recomeço Digital attracted the attention of a major international organization that supports social projects. One busy afternoon, while Pedro was helping a group of mothers with programming exercises, an email changed the atmosphere in the garage. "Helena!" Miguel called, his voice thick with excitement. "UNESCO wants to turn our project into a global model for empowering single mothers." The news spread quickly throughout the space. Maria, who was leading a new class, could not hold back her tears of joy. "Does this mean that other women in other countries will have the same opportunity we had here?" Lucas, who was working in his usual corner, immediately began to draw. His quick strokes captured the essence of the moment, smiling faces of different nationalities, all connected by lines that resembled electronic circuits. "We can adapt the platform to other languages," Pedro suggested, already typing furiously on his computer. "I can create an automatic translation algorithm to make it easier to access." Mateus, who had become the project's official communicator, was already imagining the possibilities. "I'll be able to collect stories from mothers all over the Palma world. We can create a database of overcoming challenges." Helena watched her children with evident pride. Each of them had found their own way to contribute to the project, using their unique talents to make a difference in the lives of others. "We'll need a bigger team," Miguel mused, sitting down next to Helena. "I thought about offering leadership positions to our first students. Maria could coordinate technical development, for example." "Always thinking like a CEO," Helena teased gently. "In fact," he smiled, "I've learned to think more like a father. Every decision now goes through a different filter. How will this impact not just the numbers, but the people?" Beatrice, who had become a constant presence in the project, organizing events and monitoring the students' progress, approached with a thoughtful expression. "I remember when you were little, Miguel," she said, "and your father insisted that success was measured only by your bank balance. How surprised he would be to see that our eldest grandson would rather teach other kids about programming than play video games." Pedro, hearing the comment, looked up from his computer. "It's because it's cooler to see someone learning something new. It's like when my dad taught me how to build my first robot. The best part wasn't the robot working, it was understanding how to do it." "An old man's wisdom in a child's body," Maria commented, making everyone smile. Lucas approached with his finished drawing, showing it to his family. He had captured not only the international expansion of the project, but also small, meaningful details. The old desk where it all began, the whiteboard with the first notes, and a small heart formed by lines of code. "It's our story," he explained shyly, "of how an ending can be a new beginning." Helena felt her eyes well up with tears as she saw the sensitivity with which her middle son had captured the essence of her entire journey. Miguel, equally moved, put his arm around his son's shoulders. "You know, Lucas," he said softly, "sometimes I wonder who's teaching who in this family." Mateus, who couldn't sit still for long, was already organizing a video call with UNESCO representatives. "We can show them how the project works in practice. We're going to do a live broadcast with all the classes." The youngest son's energy was contagious, and soon everyone was involved in the preparations. Maria gathered her students for practical demonstrations, Pedro prepared a presentation of the technical results, and Lucas began working on a digital mural of success stories from the project. "It's incredible," Beatrice commented to Helena, watching the movement. "How everything fit together perfectly, even when it seemed like everything was falling apart." Helena smiled, remembering the difficult days after the separation, the sleepless nights in the hospital with the triplets, the struggles to keep the project going. "Sometimes we need to trust that the universe has a plan greater than ours." The Presentation to UNESCO was an unqualified success. The Digital Restart project would not only be replicated globally, but would serve as a case study for similar initiatives around the world. The former garage, now a symbol of transformation, was packed for the celebration. "Who would have thought," Miguel commented to Helena, observing the space full of life, "that those endless nights of work here would bring us to this moment?" Helena smiled, remembering the endless cups of coffee, the heated discussions about code, the shared dreams that had seemed too big at the time, and to think we almost lost it all. The triplets moved around the room with ease. Pedro, always responsible, organized a robotics demonstration with other children from the project. Lucas had transformed an entire wall into a digital art gallery, mixing his drawings with photographs from the project. Mateus interviewed the mothers who had graduated, collecting moving testimonies for his story bank. "They are extraordinary," Beatrice commented, approaching with tears in her eyes, "each one so different and so special in their own way." Maria stood on a chair, demanding everyone's attention. "Guys, I have an important announcement to make." When the buzz had died down, she continued, "Thanks to what I learned here, I've just been hired as a senior developer at a large company, but I'm not leaving the project. I'm going to be a volunteer teacher now." Applause and shouts of joy filled the room. Helena hugged her first student, now a co-worker, with maternal pride. "Mom," Pedro called, tugging on Helena's sleeve, "can I tell you the idea I had?" With an encouraging nod, Helena gave up her seat to her son. Pedro, adjusting his glasses in a gesture that was very reminiscent of Miguel, addressed everyone. "My brothers and I are developing a special project. Lucas created the design, I'm programming, and Mateus is taking care of the communication part. It's an application that will connect all the Recomeso digital units in the world, creating a global support network." Miguel looked at Helena in surprise. "You knew that?" She nodded, equally impressed. Lucas projected some sketches on the wall, showing the intuitive interface he had created. Mateus, excited, explained how stories of overcoming would be shared on the platform. "And the best thing," Pedro concluded, "is that it will be an open-source project, so other people can contribute and improve it." Beatrice, who a few months ago barely knew how to use a smartphone, now understood enough about technology to understand the scope of her grandchildren's idea. "You are creating a global community." "Exactly, Grandma," Mateus confirmed enthusiastically, "because we learned that family isn't just about those who share the same blood, it's about those who choose to walk together." Miguel felt the weight of those words. He looked at Helena, at his children, at his mother, at all those women who had become part of his extended family. He realized that true success was not in the awards he had won or the millions he had accumulated, but in the smiles that now filled that garage. "You know," he said quietly to Helena, "I think I finally understand what you've always tried to show me." "What?" she asked, though her eyes indicated she already knew the answer. "That the greatest legacy we can leave is not what we build for ourselves, but what we build for others." Lucas, who was nearby drawing, looked up from his pad. "Is that why you chose to stay here instead of going back to the big company, Dad?" "No, son," Miguel replied, ruffling the boy's hair affectionately. "I didn't choose to stay. I chose to come home." A year had passed since the first family gathering in the renovated garage. The digital restart had expanded to 12 countries, transforming the lives of thousands of single mothers. At the old work desk, now restored and kept as a symbol, Helena found Miguel, lost in thought on a quiet morning. "Thinking about what?" she asked, sitting down beside him with 2 cups of coffee, a habit they had naturally resumed. "How life takes turns," he replied, accepting the cup. "Today is the day the boys perform at school, and for the first time I don't have any meetings conflicting with the event." The presentation was special. The triplets had developed a joint project for the science fair. Pedro programmed, Lucas designed the interface, and Mateus prepared the presentation. It was a simplified system of the application they had imagined for Recomeso Digital. "We need to go home first," Helena reminded. Lucas forgot the folder with the original drawings. Miguel smiled when he heard Helena refer to his apartment as home. Over the past few months, the boundaries between their spaces and their lives had become increasingly fluid. The boys had bedrooms in both places, and family nights often stretched late into the night, with no one wanting to break the spell of their time together. "Helena," Miguel began, his voice carrying a soft seriousness, "I've been thinking a lot about us." She looked up from her cup, her heart racing slightly. "Us? Yes, us, our family. How everything fell into place in a way I never imagined possible. The boys, the project, you, especially you." Maria walked into the garage at this moment, interrupting the conversation. She carried a large envelope and an even bigger smile. "You won't believe this," she exclaimed. "We just got invited to present Digital Restart at the UN Conference on Women's Empowerment." The news was extraordinary, but Helena noticed that Miguel seemed almost distracted by the news, something very unusual for him. Before she could question it, the triplets arrived home from school, filling the room with their characteristic energy. "Dad," Matthew called, practically jumping with excitement. "Guess who's going to be the keynote speaker for our presentation?" "You, of course," Miguel replied, knowing his youngest son well. "No," Matthew laughed. "Pedro. He said that since he was the first to believe in you, he wants to be the first to present our project as well." Pedro blushed slightly, but remained firm. "It's important to show that trust is a two-way street." Lucas, quiet as ever, approached with his inseparable sketchbook. "I made something," he said softly, turning the page to show everyone. The drawing showed the family gathered in the garage, but there was something different. On the board, in the background, between equations and codes, was written Volker Della, family in stylized letters. "I thought we needed a logo for our family too," he explained sheepishly, "since we're a family startup now." Helena felt her eyes well up, noticing how her middle son had perfectly captured the essence of her journey. Miguel put his arm around his son's shoulders, equally moved. "Family startup," he repeated, savoring the words. "Do you know what makes perfect sense? We start small, we face challenges, we grow together. And now, are we ready for the next phase?" Pedro suggested, perceptive as ever. Miguel exchanged a meaningful look with Helena. "Maybe we are, son. Maybe we are." Beatriz arrived at this moment, carrying an old box that made Helena's eyes widen in recognition. It was the box where TechVision's first documents were kept, including— "I thought you might like this back," Beatriz said softly, pulling a small notebook out of the box. "The journal where you wrote down your first dreams together." The diary was worn by time, its yellowed pages holding dreams written with the ink of youth and hope. Helena opened it carefully, recognizing her own handwriting mixed with Miguel's. "Dream." List she read aloud, a nostalgic smile on her lips. "Number 1, create technology that makes a difference in people's lives. Number 2, Miguel continued, remembering every word, building a family that is our greatest achievement." The triplets crowded around their parents, curious to see the diary. Lucas immediately began sketching the old pages, while Peter read with interest the initial technical plans of TechVision. Matthew, on the other hand, was more interested in the small personal notes written in the margins. "Look," he pointed, "Miguel fell asleep on the keyboard again. 3rd time this week. Good thing he's cute when he's drooling." Everyone laughed, including Beatrice, who watched the scene with maternal eyes. Maria, who was still holding the UN invitation, approached timidly. "Sorry to interrupt your family time, but we need to start organizing the presentation for the conference." "Actually," Miguel interrupted gently, "I think this is the perfect time to discuss this." He stood looking at everyone in the room. Recomeço Digital is not just a social project or a technological platform. It is proof that our dreams from back then have come true, just in ways we could never have imagined. Helena noticed something different in his voice, a restrained emotion that she knew well from ancient times. Miguel continued. "So before we expand any further, before the UN conference, before anything, I wanted to make a proposal." He turned to Helena, his green eyes shining with determination and affection. 2 proposals, actually. Helena's heart raced. The boys, sensing the importance of the moment, became unusually quiet. First proposal: officially transform Recomeso Digital into a family foundation. Not just mine and yours, but the boys as well. A real legacy for them to continue. Maria stifled an exclamation of surprise. Beatrice smiled proudly. And the second proposal? Helena asked, her voice barely a whisper. Miguel picked up the journal, opening it to the last page, where there was a blank space. Write a new list of dreams, together, as a family. He paused meaningfully. As husband and wife. Again. The silence that followed was broken by Matthew. Was that a marriage proposal? Yes, it was, Miguel replied, without taking his eyes off Helena. What do you say? Do you want to start this adventure with me again? Helena looked at her children, who were practically vibrating with anticipation. At Beatrice, who had tears in her eyes. At Maria, who represented all the lives they had transformed together. Finally, her eyes met Miguel's. On one condition, she said, a smile playing on her lips. Which? The ceremony has to be here in the garage. Yes! Matthew shouted, jumping for joy. Peter tried to keep his composure, but his smile gave him away. Lucas was already scribbling furiously on his pad, probably sketching the wedding decorations. But let's keep it simple, Helena added quickly, knowing well Miguel's old habit of doing everything on a grand scale. Simple, he agreed, pulling her into a hug. Just our family, our warrior mothers, and all the dreams we'll yet achieve together. Beatrice picked up the diary and a pen, handing it to them. I think it's time to start the new list, don't you? Miguel and Helena sat at the old table. The triplets crowded around them as they began to write, New Dream List, Volca Della Family. The garage at Recomeso Digital had been completely transformed for the wedding. Lucas personally coordinated the decoration, mixing technological elements with delicate touches of nature. Climbing plants intertwined with LED wires, creating a magical and meaningful setting. Keep your eyes closed, Matthew insisted, guiding Helena down the makeshift aisle. It was the morning of the ceremony, and he had taken on the responsibility of showing his mother the surprise he and his brothers had prepared. When Helena finally opened her eyes, she was speechless. On the main wall, where the boards with codes and projects were usually placed, there was an interactive digital projection. It was a timeline of the family, starting with the first photos of her and Miguel in the garage, going through the difficult moments of their separation, until they got to their reunion and the transformation of their lives. Pedro programmed, I collected the stories, and Lucas did all the visual part, Mateus explained proudly. Tears began to roll down Helena's face before she could even stop them. It's perfect, she whispered, hugging her son. Maria and the other mothers in the project had organized themselves to help with the preparations. Some took care of the simple but welcoming buffet, others helped with the organization of the space. They all wore personalized t-shirts with the logo created by Lucas, Volca Della Family, a digital restart. Helena? Beatrice called softly, entering the room. She carried a small antique box. I brought something for you. Inside the box was a delicate necklace with a small key-shaped pendant. It was my mother's, Beatrice explained. She always said that the key to happiness is knowing how to start over. I think it belongs to you now. Across the garage, Miguel was getting ready with the help of Pedro, who took his role as best man very seriously. The tie is crooked, the boy observed, adjusting. The knot with surprising precision. When did you learn how to do that? Miguel asked, impressed. YouTube, Pedro replied simply. I Googled how to fix a wedding tie as soon as you announced the date. Lucas rushed in, his sketchpad clutched tightly to his chest. Dad, I need to show you something before the ceremony. He opened the notebook to a specific page, revealing a portrait of the entire family. It wasn't just any ordinary drawing. It was an artistic representation of all the important moments they had shared, superimposed into a single, powerful image. It's to hang on the wall in our house, Lucas explained. In our real house when we're all living together. Miguel hugged his son, trying to control his emotions. We're home now, son. We always have been. It just took us a while to realize it. The time for the ceremony approached. The guests, an intimate mix of family, project students, and supporters, began to settle into the transformed space. The former work table, where so many nights had been spent developing dreams, now served as a makeshift altar. Ricardo, who continued to be more than just an assistant to Miguel, organized the final technical details. The cameras were positioned not only to record the moment, but to broadcast live to the international units of Recomeso Digital, who could not be physically present. "Everything is ready," he said, adjusting his own suit. "The African and Asian units are already connected. Latin America will be on in 5 minutes. Maria stood on a chair as she had done so many times to give important announcements. Let's begin, everyone in your seats, please." The triplets took their special positions, Pedro next to his father as best man, Lucas near the entrance, ready to coordinate the music he had composed for the moment. Matthew was everywhere at once, making sure every detail was perfect. The music began to play softly, a melody that mixed electronic sounds with acoustic notes, perfectly representing the union between technology and humanity that defined that family. Beatriz waited at the entrance to the garage, ready to lead Helena to Miguel. Her eyes, usually controlled, were shining with unshed tears. "Ready?" she asked softly. Helena took a deep breath, adjusting the simple but elegant dress she had chosen. More than ever. The moment Helena entered the garage was etched in the memory of everyone present. The music composed by Lucas played softly, while the projection on the walls changed to show digital flowers blooming with her every step. Miguel, as he saw her walking toward him, felt time stand still. She was not just the bride from his second marriage. She was the woman who had believed in him from the beginning, who had raised his children with love and determination, who had taught him the true meaning of success. The triplets watched the scene with different emotions on their faces. Peter kept his serious posture, but his eyes sparkled. Lucas captured the moment on his notebook, his hands flying over the paper. Matthew could barely contain his joy, smiling from ear to ear. "We are gathered here," began the celebrant, one of the project's first students, not only to celebrate a union, but to witness a new beginning that teaches us that sometimes we need to lose ourselves in order to truly find ourselves. The screens around showed the emotional faces of the project participants in different countries. Women who had transformed their lives through the digital restart were now witnessing this special moment. "Miguel and Helena," the celebrant continued, "you have chosen to write your own vows." "Miguel." He took a deep breath, his eyes locking with Helena's. "When we started Tech Vision in this garage, we thought we were building a company. We didn't realize we were planting the seeds of something much bigger. Helena, you always saw beyond the codes and spreadsheets. You saw people, possibilities, love. I lost my way, but you turned our mistake into something extraordinary." Helena smiled through her tears as Miguel continued. "Today, I'm not just marrying you. I'm joining a worldview you've never lost, where success is measured in smiles, where technology brings people together, where family is something we build every day." It was Helena's turn. "Miguel, our love began with a shared dream in this garage. It got lost among other dreams, but it never stopped existing. You came back different, more human, more present, more true. Our children brought you back, but it was you who chose to stay." Mateus couldn't resist and interrupted. "And now, we're a family startup." The collective laughter broke the formality of the moment, making it even more special. Pedro and Lucas joined their brother, and soon the three were next to their parents. "The rings," Peter announced solemnly, presenting a small box. The rings were simple, but they carried a special engraving, a QR code that, when scanned, showed the timeline of the family created by the boys. "Technology and love," Lucas explained shyly. "Just like you always wanted." After the exchange of rings and the long-awaited kiss, the celebration began. But this was no ordinary wedding party. It was a true celebration of the digital restart. Mothers trained by the project presented their successes, children demonstrated the educational apps they had learned to use, and stories of transformation were shared. In the center of it all, Miguel and Helena danced gently, observing the world they had created together. The triplets soon joined them, turning the dance into a group hug. "You know," Miguel said to his family, "they say success is about getting to the top, but I think we've discovered something different." "What, Dad?" Peter asked. "What success is having somewhere to return to. It's having someone to start over with." The party continued into the night, with the garage once again witnessing the birth of something new. It wasn't just the coming together of two people, but the celebration of an idea that love, technology, and purpose can transform lives when they work together. And so, between codes and hugs, between old dreams and new beginnings,